Um, so I need to read a remote meeting opening for all of us here before we begin. So welcome to the October 26th, I think that's right, Zoning Advisory Committee meeting. And so this is the introduction to the remote meeting. This open meeting of the Hopkinton's Zoning Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Zoning Advisory Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar, and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting is broadcast on HCAM TV. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. So I'm going to do a roll call of the Zoning Advisory Committee members to begin. This is Mary Larson Marlowe. Sundar.
Present.
Madhu.
Present.
Curtis.
Present.
Ron.
Present.
Ria.
Present.
And Rachel.
Present.
And John Coutinho, are you on the call? Nope. Okay. Ted did contact us and let us know that he was not going to be able to make it tonight. So Ted will not be joining us. Hopefully John will be able to join us in a bit. I wanted to welcome Rachel Rosen to our Zoning Advisory Committee. Thank you for joining us. She is an at-large member and has a 2-year term. That 2-year term will end, I believe it's like in July or August or something like that of 2022. Of course, you can re-up at that point, Rachel. So.
Madam Chair, just wanted to point out, Rachel has not been sworn in yet, so she can participate but cannot vote.
Fair enough.
I don't know if there's going to be any votes, but
I don't think we're going to vote tonight, other than on the minutes. So, and to adjourn. All right. So tonight's agenda is primarily for the purpose of a public forum. We hold these public forums at least once a year for Zoning Advisory Committee to get input from the public on things that we should take a look at in terms of changes to zoning bylaw language and the zoning maps. So I invite any members of the public who are here to speak with us to raise their hand, and I will go through each one of, and you also have the capability of unmuting your own Zoom connection. But please go ahead and raise your hand electronically if you have that capability, or else go ahead and unmute and say hello. That's fine. If you don't have the capability of raising your hand, that's no problem. And the other things on our agenda we will cover after the public forum portion as time allows. And we won't take it past 8:30 or 9. So, all right. So welcome to the public. I see lots of people on, but nobody raising their hand. Okay, so I am going to give you a moment to collect your thoughts. And I did get one comment via email from Amy Ritterbush. I forwarded it to all of the ZAC members, but I will read it for the benefit of everyone else. Oh, okay, Gail has raised her hand. Gail Ober.
Hi.
I can let you go ahead and speak, and I can always fill in with that email from Amy at a future point.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi, it's Scott Ober,
Scott.
17 Fawn Ridge Road.
sorry.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
I just wanted to make some comments regarding the solar bylaw.
Okay,
I think obviously it needs to be strengthened to protect this town. As I think you're aware, we're involved with the Franklin Road project, and we've taken issue with this, and that's another matter altogether, but I feel that it needs, the bylaw needs to be strengthened in the following ways. To have language that specifies like no clear cutting, that like to have a 100-yard buffer zone around any park or trail that the large-scale solar farm may be abutting, so that to prevent the clear cutting of existing forests, and to provide for a 100-yard buffer around the site. To discuss safe distancing requirements for any private well water in the bylaw. I don't know what the language should be. That's not my forte, but at least acknowledging that there should be some type of, that should be considered. To strengthen the stormwater regulations to ensure that there's less erosion in the abutting neighborhoods, and to have language to maybe put a cap on the size of these large-scale solar facilities in our town. And those are my comments.
okay, thank you very much. So I'm just going to reiterate what you said, just so we have this in our notes correctly. So some of the considerations that you'd like us to take into mind for solar changes to the solar bylaw is a 100-yard buffer around the site, and for abutting properties as well as around trails. No clear cutting, safe distancing for private well water, strengthen the stormwater regs and specifically around erosion concerns, and a cap on the size of solar arrays for commercial use. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Oh, good. Now I'm on.
I'm sorry, say again?
No, I finally got in.
Okay, hi, John. Thank you. Okay, Jane Moran, please go ahead.
Well, hi, Mary, and
Hello.
good evening to all of the committee members. And I have a follow-up question and a comment from our last meeting that the ZAC
Right.
provided.
Madam Chair, just need the address, Ms. Moran.
Oh, Jane Moran, 70 East Main Street, Hopkinton, Mass. Is that good enough? Thank you, John. So at our last meeting, one member, and I can't remember who said it, but when I raised the question of the zoning map is out there, but it does not have any verbiage or any documentation to back it up. And this member, and I don't remember who it was, and I have not had a chance to read your minutes from the last meeting. I think I know who it is, but I don't want to call that out without reading the minutes. So they stated that the verbiage language was not recommended. So I was surprised by that, because we had heard from the assistant town council at a planning board member meeting that stated that the Attorney General, the state Attorney General wouldn't really look at the map. They would only really look at the verbiage that came out of the planning board via the ZAC. You know, in this case, the verbiage is going to come out of the ZAC. So I'm wondering on what authority that member thinks that language came from, and what's the reasoning behind it?
Okay, Jane,
So-
hi, this is Mary. I'm not even sure exactly what we're talking about right now. I know that you made some suggestions last time at the zoning advisory committee meeting
Yes,
that we could take into account for the solar bylaw, and that included adding some specific restrictions
correct.
to the wording of the bylaw. And that those are outlined in the minutes from our talk last time. I recall also that that one of our members did talk about how additional, increasing the buffer zones for solar specifically was indicated to us to not be legal according to the state laws. So that particular language wouldn't be allowed, but not that none of these suggestions you made would be allowed, just that certain things we've been told would not be allowed. And that's why we had in the previous year focused on a solar overlay map. So that was more the point, and I'm not sure other than that what exactly you're suggesting. So
Well, no, I was suggesting that there is multiple languages, that verbiage that you could put in there, just
Mhm.
as our previous caller suggested, that we strengthen up the bylaw and be very specific about what can and cannot go into a
Yep.
commercial zolar as commercial zoning bylaw.
Yep.
And this particular member, and I don't really want to name names because he's not here right now, stated that we were advised that verbiage not be accompanied with the map. So I
No,
was
that's-
confused at the
that's-
time. So no, Mary, let me finish.
Jane, I'm
So
sorry,
I-
that's
no,
not
so
what
I-
Ted said. We
Okay,
know what
so
Ted-
thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
That's
So-
not quite what Ted said, but we definitely want to consider additional language, but we obviously will need to comply with the state laws, and we'll have legal counsel input on that.
If
No
I may, through
question
the
about
chair,
it.
Mayor,
So,
Correct.
all right,
if I may.
Yeah.
Mayor, what I think what we might need to do, and the last caller or the last citizen that just spoke, giving us some guidance. What we should have in there are the parameters that had us design that map. So
sure.
that, because at town
Mhm.
meeting, when we start bringing up, people are going to say, well, how did you come up with the sites that you came up with?
That's-
And
Exactly.
have some of those things like the gentleman before and what Jane are talking about is a distance from there or a distance from this place or some guidance so that we can back up why that map is that map, because otherwise it does look kind of arbitrary and much of it on state land,
Yep.
which, and then people, it's sort of like, I remember when we were doing the medical marijuana 5 years ago, and we had the state guideline, which I think was like 500 yards from a school, et cetera, et cetera. And we had people at town meetings saying 2 miles, make it 2 miles from a school, and it was that would have been ridiculous. And other people said no restrictions at all. So we decided to stay right with the state guidelines at that point. But we had guidelines to back up why we had certain maps.
Right.
And so I think that this being the second person that's speaking and they're saying exactly that, we're going to this is going to take up a few meetings, I think.
Absolutely. This was not intended to just be a solar discussion here today. It was intended to just get input
So that's
on
good. We picked in the
on
9th to do it.
all sorts of zoning. Yes. And one of the things that we discussed at the last meeting was the criteria that we used and potentially criteria we use in the future for a solar overlay. So absolutely. Those are some of the things that we're keeping in mind. Some of the other things that Ms. Moran, you said last time, potentially restricting the percentage of the lot that can be developed for solar.
Yeah.
Grade restrictions.
Mhm.
I'm repeating these simply for the sake of getting them all in one place. And so although I'm reading from the minutes of the last meeting, I think they need to go in this meeting minutes as well. And percentage of lot to be developed. Okay,
And I think it's going to take a lot of work to come up with some congenial language that would meet both of the all of the needs of not only the property owners, the private property owners, but the abutting neighbors, but also the town and what our town wants ourselves to look like. So I think this is going to be a much bigger project than what the ZAC might be anticipating. We can't just fly through this with, 1 or 2 sentences. I think if you're going to have a map, which is all right, I think we have to have some concrete language that backs up why the map is why the map is.
okay, thank you. Do you have any other suggestions for zoning changes?
As far as the solar or just
No,
everything in
I mean,
general?
anything in general.
No.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
The next person I have is Sean Kimball. Sean Kimball? Oh, there you are. You can unmute yourself. Go ahead. And also, please state your name and your address.
On,
Oh,
he's still
did
on
it-
mute?
Yep, there you are.
Hi, Sean.
All right, I'll start over. Sean Kimball, 64 Teresa Road. And I just wanted to, we in the Charlesview neighborhood, we're aware of the solar quite intimately. And we started doing some research on our own just to kind of figure out what Jane was talking about. This is a lot of work. And I definitely appreciate the efforts of both the planning board, the town in general, with Zach now, with Concom. It's a lot. And we came across a study by the town of Athol, who's essentially doing the same exact thing we're doing, right? They're going through this process. They're working with property owners, with the town, with developers and the like, and they're trying to get through it just like we are right now. And so I would definitely encourage the members of ZAC to review this report, because there's a lot of great information on there. The things what Jane was talking about and what Scott Ober just mentioned, this particular report has some drafted bylaws that they're recommending for their own town committees to look at, to review for passage. And some items that they were talking about in this particular report or in their drafted bylaws are setbacks, screening, minimum acreage, noting of land clearing, making sure that the developer and the town are in one and the same with on-site visits. There are some modification conditions, meaning if they're going to modify substantially the development, that the appropriate town committees have a voice in that process as well. And there's some language on segmentation, meaning joining additional lots and the like. So without reading it to you tonight, I would just encourage you to read it on your own. I'd be more than happy to email it to you all or send it to John and he can disseminate it to the rest of you.
That would be great. It sounds like a lot of those things are contained in our bylaw right now, at least the ones you mentioned, but there's absolutely, we're looking for any and all ideas. and particularly ones from Massachusetts that may have already gone through the process of being okayed by the Massachusetts State Attorney General, are even more so useful to us. Was there anything else, Sean?
No, I did not have anything else.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next person I have is Ron Nation.
Hi, Ron Nation, 43 Smith Road. At the last meeting, the question that the person that's not here tonight had was, the statement was that the setbacks and regulations couldn't be changed, or that's what he thought he had heard from Elaine. And I've checked into that a little bit, and they can be changed pretty much however you want to change them. I'm not sure about setbacks, if that's the one issue, but I think there are many issues more than just setbacks. So I think that that's definitely doable. That you can make your own rules and regulations is basically what you can do. Just anyone saying that you can't do that is from what I understand, is dead wrong. So you're not powerless. And another thought was, I heard some talk at the last hearing of what suitable areas were, and didn't really hear any kind of criteria for that, or objective criteria for what the suitable areas would be. So I think it would be nice to nail that down if that's even possible before before you can go much further. So if an area is suitable, if the Route 495 is suitable, then it would seem to me like the whole town would be suitable. It's for the most part heavily wooded. It's got steep terrain. It's got wetlands. It's got everything. And it's if that's a suitable area, and we don't want to have Hopkinton look like the solar capital of the world, I think the whole thing's going in the wrong direction. And that's about all I have for now.
Okay.
Yeah, there is one thing. One of the solar projects that's been taking a lot of criticism was on Alexander and Lumber. And I wonder if anybody ever thought about lowering the elevation of the site so that the panels, I just take a quick ride by there, and it seems like the panels are elevated behind people's houses. And the site is very easy oftentimes to just reduce the elevation of a site, and maybe take the material that you took out of the site to lower it and build a berm around the site. And maybe you wouldn't have even seen the panels from Alexander. I don't know if that was attempted or talked about, or because to me it seems like that'd be the first thing I would have wanted to look at. But there are just so many things that can be done with the site to make it to keep everybody happy, and which makes it so that in itself makes it hard to call an area suitable or unsuitable, because the site can be modified. Anyway, just throwing that out. I have also read I've looked at it. It's long, but the Athol study, and it's got a lot of good points in it, and I definitely think that should be looked at.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you
I'll
very
keep
much.
listening.
Thanks.
Yeah, but I don't know, did anybody ever look at that site for anybody ever consider lowering that site on?
I wasn't on the planning board at the time that went through, and so I don't know what the background was. I know that was before we modified the zoning bylaw to include a little bit more language around the screening, but that's all I know in terms of the timing.
It just I just think of that. It just seems to me as a builder, it just seems like just I guess pretty much a no-brainer. to have investigated that and possibly could have worked and everybody would be happy or
Mhm.
happier.
Right, right.
That's all
Okay,
for now. Thank you.
I did want to take a moment here to go ahead and read an email from, on a suggestion from Amy Ritterbush. Okay, so she wasn't able to attend tonight because of a growth study committee, but she's suggesting a sign bylaw change to, in addition to the 2 temporary signs that are allowed in each lot for 30 days at a time, allow 1 non-governmental flag or banner. So I think non-political is what she's saying. Allow the non-political flag or banner to be up for a longer period of time, for example, 90 days or 180 days, or maybe from Patriots Day in April through Veterans Day in November. Keep a reasonable limit on the size of such banners and flags. Reasoning: although I understand the rationale that too many of the plastic yard signs can take away from the rural character of the town, I don't think residents feel the same about flags and banners. Flags or banners are usually a more expensive item and residents invest more money in them than for the yard signs. Many residents are in violation of this bylaw, but it's rarely enforced. I took a walk around my own block and saw 9 flags or banners in violation. These included college banners, Patriots football, the rainbow peace flags. My sense is that residents want to keep these sort of non-governmental banners up for more than 30 days. For sports, I think they want to keep it up for the full sports season, for example. Thoughts or ideas? I do realize that because we cannot regulate sign content, this could open the door for Nazi or Confederate flags to also be flown for more than 30 days, so that it can be a slippery slope to change it. And this is a question she's posing. Should this also be extended to business zones? I see Marty's has had a peace flag posted for more than 30 days, for example. I don't think that there have been any complaints. So that's Amy's suggestion for us to consider, and that will go in our minutes and on our work plan for discussion at a subsequent meeting.
Excuse me, through the chair. Isn't there a difference between a banner and a flag? Can we control flags that are on flagpoles?
I don't know. And I don't know if the sign bylaw actually mentions banners.
It mentions
It
banners.
just talks about signs.
No, we talked about banners because we talked about banners going across the road. Remember, we had to change it last year
Well,
because
that's the big banners across road.
yeah, that's
So-
because we miscalculated what 4 feet by 40 feet was and came up with the wrong number. So we had to actually come up with the number that they actually put up there.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we can control, whether or not people put an American flag or a
Or a Patriots flag.
college flag or a Patriots flag. Yeah, but I can understand, signage and stuff. But I think if we start getting into some of those kinds of things, some BC fans or Virginia Tech fans or others might get upset.
So, Madam Chair, in the zoning, banner is defined as a temporary sign that is applied to cloth, paper, flexible plastic, or fabric of any kind, and that is hung from the ends and or the top thereof. So I think flags are technically under that definition of banner because they're
Yeah.
hung from the end.
I would say that
fabric.
they technically do qualify. So, okay.
Mm.
All right. So we can't discuss it more this evening since
Yeah.
it's not on the agenda per se, but good points to think about. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back to the people who have their hands raised. Brian Paris. Could you state your name and address?
This is Brian Paris at 68 Teresa Road. And Madam Chair, I would like to not let Mr. Mason's comments pass about the Alexandria Road abutters. And to be short, I have to tell you, I went for a walk around my neighborhood this evening. And as you pass, now that the leaves are falling off the trees, now if you pass the solar farm that abuts Alexandria Road, there's nothing else you can see. Now, you could put the solar panels on the ground, and you'd still be able to see them. I estimated you'd probably need a berm about 40 feet high to block the solar panels from view from the street, let alone from the backyard. Now, the reason for this is the solar array was built up a steep incline. So the further away you get from it, the more you see. And the buffer zone is inadequate to block the solar arrays. So I can't imagine any kind of construction that would take away this entire, well, take away any of the sight lines to the solar array. And so I just wanted to make that clarifying point. While it sounds like a wonderful idea to excavate perhaps, or to lay the solar panels lower, but this array was built up a very steep incline, and the additional arrays that are proposed for the extended parcel behind Teresa Road are also on that very same incline and would suffer from the same sightline issue. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I could not get his address. It was hard to hear him.
It was Teresa Road, but what number on Teresa Road?
68 Teresa Road, right next to the solar array.
Missed it again.
68.
68. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anyone else that has their hand raised right now. Would anyone else like to speak and give us suggestions for consideration of changes to bylaws over the next year or two for us to add to our work plan? And you're very welcome to raise your hand later in the meeting while we're discussing other things if you wish to stay with us. We are not discussing the solar bylaw tonight. That is not on our agenda, but we will be discussing it at our next meeting. And I would welcome any of you to who have great interest in that particular bylaw to come to that meeting and give us comments as we are discussing it as a committee. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen for the next portion. So let's see here. Okay, yep, nobody else has raised their hand, so I'm going to just assume that that's all good. I'm still trying to figure out how to, hang on, share screen. Okay, there we go. I think this is right. Sorry, it's a little tricky. Okay. Subdivision regs. I'm going to the subdivision regs that I sent all of you the other night, and I'm going to first of all just describe to you what has been discussed for the on and off for the last year or so within ZAC and at the planning board, that there are several items that can be potentially changed within subdivision regs. That's
Madam
not
Chair,
really,
I don't think you're sharing that document that you're referencing.
okay. Your screen share, new share. Okay. There we go. Thank you.
Sure.
See, I switch over to it.
Still not sharing.
I know it's. I have to
Madam
hit
Chair,
two
there you
buttons.
go. Is
ahead.
this, what agenda item is this for?
This is for the fire protection and for the stone walls. Yeah. So this is potentially where those things would go, because these are suggestions for guidelines rather than rules or laws or bylaws, you know, or something like that. So, and John, you can, John G, can you clarify for us what are the rules around changes to this subdivision regs, rules and regs? So who has to vote on this and how does it get changed?
So the subdivision regs are purely planning board. They can amend them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I also wanted to say that everything that I've prepared is, very, very early draft. And not only, would like you guys to think on it and give comments on it, but I'm going to be sending it around to various people. And then, of course, it would go to the planning board and they'll discuss it for a while too. So, so I highlighted the areas just for easy reference. Fire prevention and protection measures on page 32 of this this document. There's also a section on shade trees, vegetation, and natural and historic features that may be a place for a Stonewall guideline. We'll have to see. And then street trees is mentioned on page 52. So I'm going to go to the fire protection first. Okay. So all of you except for Rachel and Curtis have received, and we've discussed a lot of different documents and information on the use of home fire sprinklers. And some of us had the opportunity to attend a demonstration last year where they burnt down to like sample rooms, and the amazing difference in the damage and the time to burn something down when there were fire sprinklers in the simulated home versus not. The fire department really likes us to consider these additions to new construction. I mean, they can be done in existing construction, but it's new construction that we're focusing on, obviously. And particularly as the town becomes more and more built out, the distances from fire stations, the availability of town water, the length of driveways and dead end roads and so on makes everything a little bit harder to get to for the fire department. And so, and every second counts when there's a fire situation. So the other piece of it that, just to remind you of is that we cannot insist on home fire sprinklers in new construction. That's not something that is allowed by state law. So, but we can encourage it. And so that's why, in fact, Elaine suggested that it might be good in this section, in this document, because this is more of a guidelines document. So anyhow, I put in just a very brief discussion of the types of considerations a developer or a single person, property house builder would want to consider for home sprinklers. I certainly would like to think that anybody would consider it for any new construction, period. But there's also the particular consideration should be given for dead end streets, particularly longer dead end streets, for long driveways, shared driveways, increased grade on driveways or street, narrow streets, and high density housing. All of those things contribute to slowing down of the places that, or the fire department can get to, the slowing down of that response time. High density housing is really just higher than your typical density housing. So that can mean a lot of different things, but so do I have any questions or comments or ideas on this at this point?
Mary?
Yes.
One thing I see missing from your list is the distance to a hydrant, which seems obvious to me.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to put it back into track changes mode. Okay. Okay. Oh. What did I do? There you go. Thank you. Anyone else?
So, Madam Chair, given that this is being presented as a guideline, what outcome would we end up achieving by, let's say, making this a formal guideline in this document? Meaning, would that be some kind of a checklist that the new owner or the company which is building the home would have to at least acknowledge? Where does it go from there? Meaning, given that you clearly called out that this is not a mandate but a suggestion and a guideline, what ends up happening once it's on the books? Should it get on the books?
So one thing that, and John, I'm going to call on you for this to add to it, but depending on how we word it, we could make it something that the planning board insists that anyone address in an application. So justify why you're not doing home sprinklers, basically, something like that. And John G, I assume that, you would probably have wording suggestions for something like that as well.
Mary, wouldn't it also be something that you would have under consideration for a special permit? If you're hitting most of these, ideas in your application and you're doing all the right things in a certain area, you may be more likely to get the special permit, my guess.
Yeah, and so it depends on the degree to which the planning board wants to lay out the trade-offs in a document versus just having that as a negotiation method.
Well, if I may, what can we do to encourage this? Because, for builders, it's could be anywhere from like 4 to, actually now after COVID, anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 probably to fully sprinkle. It used to be anywhere from 4 to 6, but with COVID, the price of everything's just gone through the roof. What can we do to incentivize this? Because if it's something that we really want, and it would help our fire department, so we could save costs there. Is there something we can do to incentivize this so that instead of just having the stick, can we put a carrot as well as a stick? Not use the planning board to use as a negotiating tool, but it's something that the builders might want to do because we're giving them a break someplace.
Okay.
Because one of the other things, it's a really good thing to do, but one of the things that happens with home sprinkler systems is people don't maintain them. And it ends up being a false sense of security. And so that's something that we have to make sure that people keep up with.
Okay. All right.
Is it appropriate to mention the contact, like the fire safety officer from the fire department can give more guidelines or help?
Oh, absolutely. That was going to be one of my next stops. So I just wanted to make sure that I got your comments initially, and really whether or not we want to make this, make a trade-off, specifically in this document, specifics for this, or leave open. So that's more of a planning board decision, but we could write it two different ways and suggest it to them, so.
Yeah.
So that's an option. One thing that, I wanted to see is I'd like to see this at the beginning of the fire protection. It's easy to add something, an existing document, just add it at the end, but I really don't think I'd want this at the end of the whole fire protection long section, because I think people will very easily skip over it.
Hey, Mary, this is Rachel. Can I ask a question of what you mean here by new construction, if that's defined anywhere, and whether that means a completely new building on property, or if it includes additional buildings on properties, or how you define that?
I was referring to a new structure being built. However, question, should it apply to, or granted, this isn't a mandate either way, but should it apply to just a new building on an existing property in addition to, does it make any sense to put a fire sprinkler system in one part of a home, for the addition, but it's not in the main part of the home? I don't know. Any thoughts?
Well, if I may, through the chair, one of the things that you have to watch out for, trying to put into additions would cost a fortune. To try and retrofit a house can be as much as like $20,000 to retrofit a sprinkler system into a house. And again, these are numbers that are coming out of my head from pre-COVID. Again, post-COVID,
Yeah.
you can't even get lumber right now, so.
But Madam Chair, new construction is not usually considered additions. It's tear downs and then, rebuilds or building on an undeveloped lot.
That
Right.
makes
So
sense.
through the chair, should we also sort of qualify what we mean once again by new construction? If there is a undeveloped lot in a pre-existing dead-end street, all the other homes don't have a home sprinkler system, are we essentially saying a home in a pre-existing dead-end street, a new home, would still need to have this? Meaning, if there are 10 other homes there, the 11th home is the only one which would have this requirement. The other 10 homes may have been grandfathered for various reasons. So I'm just questioning, could that pose a challenge when we get to that juncture? Or should we say a brand new street, a brand new subdivision definitely makes sense? I wonder if there is some fuzziness, and there are already certain homes there and a new home would need this. Just curious about what the group thinks.
Again, since it's not going to be a requirement, I don't think it matters as much. If it were a requirement, then it would be more debatable how we would word it.
Okay.
But my personal opinion is that 11th house on the street, there's still benefit to that house.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Madam Chair, it's also, I think, worth pointing out is that if you have a subdivision where there's 11 houses, 10 of them already built, the 11th doesn't have to get new subdivision approval. It's still under the previous subdivision approval.
Right.
So it's also grandfathered along with those other houses. It's when you would do like an A&R or a brand new subdivision.
Okay.
Good point.
So we might be able to look at something, like I was talking about, incentives to get people to do it, because it really does help out the fire and rescue and all the special officers. Is that maybe we can look into, can we do rebates? I know some small rebate or something like that, but since it does help the town a lot, that it might be something that we can do. The entire Legacy Farm Village is all sprinkled, and that really does help our chief sleep at night, knowing that all the homes are are just that much safer than the rest of the town, the rest of the 3,500 homes.
Absolutely. That actually leads me to another question for John G. And that is, this clearly subdivision regs does not apply to garden apartments or townhouse developments or things like that. Is that right?
Required is commercial.
To a certain extent. I mean, if they're going to build roads, they have to build the roads to subdivision standards. But that's a separate special permit. But it should also be noted that garden apartments don't, or I guess I don't want to say can't be, but generally can't be built unless the town is below the 10% affordable housing rate.
And John, isn't that considered commercial in terms of its level of development?
How do you mean considered commercial?
It has to meet commercial standards. It has to have ADA. It has to have.
So that's building code, which is a separate thing then.
Right.
I don't know about that. That's the building department that enforces that. In terms of zoning, it would still be residential because it's residential units.
But the way that it's developed and built is as a commercial project. It's apartments it's not one apartment. It's a group of apartments. Isn't that considered more of the standard of the commercial guidelines in the building code?
In the building code, maybe, but we're not talking about changing the building code.
Right. No, but I'm saying it's already covered is what I'm saying.
Yeah, Rhea saying, sprinklers are probably already covered because they're covered for commercial.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I can't answer that because I don't know that answer.
Okay, they might already be in place for apartments.
They're definitely already.
Okay, fair enough. So you still, this could still be a reasonable place to put it rather than someplace else in other regs. One thing is that, that I've learned over the last few years is that planning board has a tendency to utilize these subdivision regs as reference for a lot of things that, they may, a particular applicant may only come in and need to be building a road, for instance. Well, they have to build it to the subdivision regs. And even, not necessarily, the subdivision, of course, as I'm probably telling you something you guys already know, but my first assumption about subdivision was that it's a subdivision, which means a lot of houses altogether, a development of a lot of houses, but this applies to any subdivision of land. So that's really can be, one lot that's divided into two lots or something like that. So, so that's, that kind of expands the usage of it. Okay, these are good thoughts. I'm going to clean this up and just send this portion to the fire department first and get some thoughts from them, and then probably have John look at it and clean it up and make it more the right language for for these types of things, and then see if I can get any other input, and then bring it back to us in a few meetings time.
Mary, if I may, if you don't, I don't know if it's still available, but if there is any insurance gains by putting sprinklers, if they can add some details about that from the fire department, if we can get something.
Right.
Like,
I'll try to get specifics from fire department. Okay, that sounds good.
Could we, Madam Chair, could we make a recommendation for any kind of accelerated approval of plans in case a fire sprinkler system is installed? I don't know how much of a gain that is for the builder, but for whatever it's worth, making the process simpler in terms of time might be an incentive.
John G, I don't know if that's at all practical, but I put it down here.
I mean, it depends on how it's worded, but I would love to hear from Mr. Savaram on how he proposes to accelerate permitting in the planning board.
that's up to Chief Slaman to say, yeah, I can do some things for you.
Okay, sounds good. It looks like Jane Moran has her hand up. Jane, did you have some input?
Yeah, but I wanted to go back. I noticed that the in-home fire sprinkler is number 3. I just had a small comment for the Stonewall guideline discussion for when number 2 on your agenda.
Okay, we're getting to that next.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you.
I'm going to switch over to that. I have a different document with my notes on Stonewall. And I'm going to have to reshare it. Here we go. Stonewall. Okay, there we go. Share. There's so many buttons to push to make this work. Okay. So this, again, is a situation where we talked about this in the last fiscal year about stone walls and having a guideline around it. Again, not a mandate. There are certain things that are mandated in the scenic road bylaws regarding stone walls in the right of way of scenic roads only. But these guidelines can be used by the planning board as reference for anybody working on a scenic road stone wall, or anyone else in town who happens to have stone walls on their property and just wants some guidance of how to maintain it as best possible. So that's the idea. Again, this is not a mandate, more of a guideline. And I kept it separate because it's wordy, and also because I need input from John G on where this would go. I don't know if it's appropriate for subdivision regs or not. Okay. So I borrowed some wording in some of this area from a different bylaw that we had looked at last year. Essentially, the important stuff is down here. Efforts should be made to preserve the existing historic stone walls in their original locations. The replacement of an historic stone wall at its original location or in a new location on the property is recommended to be with the same materials, same construction method as the original wall, using as many original stones as possible. When additional stones are necessary to repair an historic stone wall, it is recommended to source the same type, size, color, and shape of stones. Use the original wall. It's important. We see a lot of fairly roundish stones in this area, but that's not always the case. It really depends on the walls in that area, that particular lot of property. It depends. Sometimes they're flatter stones, sometimes they're rounder. It doesn't matter. It's just the idea being that we preserve it more or less the way it was. And this is like I said, this is partial right now. I mean, I have more information I could add about the types of walls and how high they're built and so on and so forth. And then it just talks about dry set, stone shape and size. The original height is generally no more than about 2.5 feet or 3 feet high. And new stone walls must closely approximate the appearance of the adjoining historic stone wall with respect to the width, the distribution of stones, etc. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but basically that's the idea, is that that we would provide these guidelines. Planning board would be able to utilize them because we get very frequent applications for some changes. Somebody's building a driveway or temporarily making some space for some construction and then going to rebuild the stone wall where it was. So we would just like to have something easy to refer people to that would cover the basics. Okay, so I'm gonna let Jane have her comment right now about stone walls.
Sure. So thank you, Mary, for this opportunity. So I was on a site walk this past few weeks with the planning board, and we were reviewing or just looking at where a new development was going to go. And there were these beautiful old stone walls, old farm stone walls that were used to keep cattle in or whatever. And I asked the contractor if it was at all possible to repurpose these stones, incorporating in the plans for the new homes with driveways or walkways or, stone walls in front of their houses or wherever the accumulated stones could be. So I think this is different language than what I'm seeing here now. And they said they would be willing to do it. So it would be nice to have some stronger language, maybe coming from Zach, that could, actually state that any old farm stone walls that are within this developmental area that are going to be destroyed be repurposed in some fashion in the new development.
Is that?
Be it stone walls or walkways or driveway structures or something.
Okay. Okay, good. Good. I know one bylaw that we looked at last year that I didn't borrow from directly for this talked about, that was where there was a specific penalty because they were having situations where people were pilfering the stones for other uses,
Yes.
stealing them and taking them away. And obviously we could put in something like that. There wouldn't be a penalty because this is a guideline, but that would be, kind of the encouragement is, make use of it on that property. Don't take it away.
Correct. So my thought process is, I know just from my experience, is that these old farm stone walls are very valuable. And I think that in a lot of instances, these stones are taken away and sold for other purposes. It would be nice if we could keep them in the historic district where they originated from and either use them stone walls for the homes or driveway constructions or other landscaping purposes so that they could actually remain in Hopkinton. That's my only thought process.
Thank you very much. I agree. Any other thoughts on this one? Again, this is one of the situations where it's an early phase. I encourage you to read it more thoroughly when you have time and make edits. Please use track changes so we can just keep track of, various suggestions. I am going to ask some other people within the town, including John G. and his staff, to also take a look at this, as well as to give suggestions about where it is best utilized. So, John, I was also gonna see whether or not recent conditions that we put into place, the wording of the conditions be amended to this in some way to say suggested conditions, that planning board might use. So it actually just make it easier for planning board as well as you and Stephanie to just pull from a boilerplate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's something we can come up with. I was just going to suggest, this seems like something that could be a standalone document. I don't know if it would go in the subdivision regs. If you want it to go in the subdivision regs, it could be an appendix.
Okay.
But I think it it's significant enough to stand on its own and just be a guidance document for stone walls from the planning
Okay.
board.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, a
Yes.
basic question here. So, is the presumption that stone walls are in the periphery of a lot, meaning if this is an undeveloped lot, it would the wall is not in a place where the home would be built, meaning
No.
is-
It could be. It
and
could
in
be
that
one of those
situation,
situations. That's why I said where it's possible, preserve it. But if it's
okay,
not possible,
okay, got it,
yeah.
got it. Okay, so
Yeah.
we are not saying you can't develop that land because there is a stone wall there, but make a provision to maybe repurpose it to maybe build along a driveway or maybe a periphery wall.
Right.
Okay, okay, got it, got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So that's the idea behind this, that we weren't going to, restrict the use of the property, just saying that be aware that these really are historic structures. And, I think more and more people have become aware of that, and particularly in New England, but yeah, that they're important. And if we lose them all, then we're going to regret it. So, yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
I was just going to mention that there's a book called Stone by Stone by Robert Thorson,
Yeah.
history of the stone walls. It's a good read if you want to get some background on why the walls are here.
I
Mostly
haven't.
because they were in the way of agriculture and they were moved to the
Yeah.
edge of the fields.
Absolutely. I've read some things. I've read excerpts of it, and it's referenced here in the definition. So that and I borrowed this from a different bylaw from a different town, but they reference the books by Thornton, because that way anyone using this guideline can also go there for extra information if they wish. So Rachel and Curtis, I'll also forward along some of the other information that we circulated last year when we were discussing this. And I apologize they didn't do so before the meeting, but we will be discussing this, and before finalization, we'll be discussing this several more times, I'm sure. Okay. All right, then. Where are we now? Which, okay, it's 8:07. Okay, we're doing well. Stonewall. Okay. OSLPD. I will pull up the OSLPD. There we go. Who's knocking? Okay. Everybody see it?
yes.
Okay. Thank you, John, for sending this to us. So the open space and landscape preservation development. My understanding of the history is that this was put into place to encourage developments, the design of developments that preserved more open space rather than just giving everybody a really big yard. And so that the common open space, could mean houses are slightly closer together, but that there's open space surrounding the development, which not only buffers it from neighbors, but gives recreational opportunities and preserves nature and stuff. So Gary specifically asked us to, Gary, the planning board chair, asked us to take a look at this to see whether or not there's any way that we can beef up the incentives to developers to utilize this type of development. So although there's not a clear standard development versus OSLPD development, but I know that for instance, dead ends, our traditional bylaw for subdivisions is 500 feet length of a dead end. That's the limit. And for OSLPD, it's 1,000 feet length of a dead end. So that's one incentive that was put into place at some point in this bylaw. John G, is the setback requirements, are they different for this, for the OSLPD versus standard?
So there is a provision for dimensional requirements to be lessened.
Okay,
I have them in front of me if you'd like me to read them.
yeah,
So this is for Residence B agricultural and residence lakefront districts. So you can reduce the minimum lot area, the minimum frontage, minimum front side and rear yard setbacks. I don't have a comparison, but those are all reducible, if that's a word,
okay.
in the OSLPD.
And that's the idea behind it being, houses closer together potentially. That's making that possible. Okay. I also know that some things that aren't written into this bylaw, but are at the, I can't think of the word, at the discretion, thank you, of planning board, certain things, certain additional leeway is given to certain developments. Particularly, there's negotiations around, how to traverse wetlands and there's a lot of times when they're setting aside quite a lot of open space for the town, there's a little bit more leeway in some of the other rules and regs. I did notice when reading through this is that okay, so the development must be at least 10 acres or 5 acres if located adjacent to an open space that will be expanded. I don't know if that severely limits the usability of this bylaw. I don't know if John, Rhea, anyone can comment on that. That's a possibility that that it limits.
Mary, I believe finding 10 acres anywhere is difficult.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's the major problem with this bylaw.
Okay, that's the major one.
Yeah.
I also see that it's only detached single-family dwellings, and again, John G. I don't know. I don't know if that's because it overlaps with other bylaws that deal specifically with townhouses and things like that. I don't know. I was just wondering why it's only detached single-family dwellings.
I don't know. I don't know what the intent behind that was. I believe that was something that was put in place when it was adopted back in the 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
whenever it was adopted. My guess would be that that was the goal, is to have more single family dwellings and not have attached dwellings in town, but that's just a guess.
Okay. So those are two areas that I thought might be able to be modified to make this more attractive. No dead end street. Okay, so this is the part about the dead end streets, 1,000 feet in length. And sometimes that's even extended more, but at the discretion of planning board. Common driveways permitted. Again, that's, often done at the discretion of planning board. But no more than 2 per house. And the rest of it is about the common open space, the uses of that. I don't think that limits the usability of it. Again, John G., do you know if this formula for for the use, the total number of lots, total number of, if that's confusing to people or if it's, do you think it limits people using this?
It may. I haven't heard complaints from developers about that, but that doesn't mean it's not a concern.
Okay. Because it specifically says at the beginning that it is not the intent of this article to make undevelopable land developable or to permit an increase in the number of building lots that would otherwise be possible on a conventional plan. But I know that the formula that people go through does result in an increase in lots sometimes. At least that's what I seem to remember.
Not too many lots that are 45,000 square feet around the lake.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just stating the obvious.
Very true. So we should take a look maybe at the formula
It would be an
itself.
expensive one.
Really.
John C., do you have any comments on this?
It's people have been using the open space, versus conventional for a while, just to get around stuff. If somebody's got a large lot and they want to be able to still build 10, 12 houses or whatever, and it might end up being easier for them to do one of these, just to get around some of the regulations, and to donate land that's really no good for anything else to the town.
Right.
But to Ria's point, somebody said,
is this really donating? I thought it was just so that you'd have common area to use for the ownership. I wasn't sure that this was being donated.
A lot of times people do donate it,
but it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement.
That's what, okay. All right.
Yeah. But to Ria's point, it's when we're starting to talk about lakefront, it's just, Ria, it's sort of like downtown when the average lot is 6 to 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
4 to 10,000.
My house is on 14,000 and I look like a mansion compared to most houses seriously around me. But the lakefront lots were nickel lots that were given away on a raffle at a cinema in Brookline. That's what this is. So they were cheap lots to be given away to promote a cinema during the Depression.
Wow. So, okay, so we'll take a look at the formula too. So if anybody has any other ideas about how, what aspects of this bylaw need to be amended to make it more attractive or more practical in this town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the 10 acres, minimum size is obvious, an obvious one.
But again, I think this actually brings us back down to what Jay Moran was talking about. Are we trying to, and this is where zoning comes. Are we trying to encourage or discourage? And then one of the things that Jane had mentioned in the minutes from the meeting that I missed was, if people don't put solar, maybe they'll put 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 houses. Do we want houses or we want solar? Or what, one of those, we have to walk that fine line as to do we want to reduce the size of the lots to encourage more building? Because it seems like that's why that other meeting's going on right now on the other side of town.
Oh yeah.
And because some people don't want it, but at some point we're gonna be built out anyway. Towns are either growing or they're dying. They really don't stay the same.
John, do you know how far we are from being fully built out, given the current zoning? This
Is that
is
a question for me?
John G or John C.
We don't have that information. A build out analysis hasn't been done recently.
I'm sure the
Okay.
growth committee needs to know that.
I bet they do. Maury Gasser has his hand raised and would like to make a comment. So Maury, could you give your name and address?
Maury Gasser, 28 South Mill Street, and president of HALT. I'd just like to make a comment that the land isn't, the open space is not donated, but if it isn't donated, it has to have a conservation restriction on it, which is a pretty onerous thing. So it's effectively is donated because of the conservation restriction.
Okay.
And the other comment I want to make is I have some ideas how I'd like to change this bylaw that doesn't have to do with encouraging development, but making the open space more useful for its intended purpose, which is recreation, public access, stuff like that. There have been a number of issues we've had with these developments, and you know, would you take that input? I don't have it all written down right now, but
I would love that input.
okay.
That's a good one.
Okay, I guess I'll write something up and send it in.
Okay.
Thank you, Maury.
Okay, good. And yeah, and I just wanted to clarify one thing that Maury referred to. This is, you know, we've been asked to look at this not as a means of encouraging development overall, but encouraging this development rather than conventional development. So if we're going to have development, this is the kind of development that the town would prefer. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's good. That gives us something to work towards. Yeah, what's the end game? Oh, great. So that makes it a heck of a lot easier now. Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that that was clear because I probably misspoke at the beginning. Okay, good.
So one of the things, if I may, one of the things that, you know, some of the people that we should probably be speaking to, people that do developments in town. Too bad we still don't have their nations on. They were on early because, you know, they're the ones that, you know, that do this all the time. It's just like, you know, how do we encourage this? What are some of the numbers we can play with so that we can get some more halt land or land under conservation restrictions, you know, more trails to cut through, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. And I have no problem just like contacting, you know, some of our developer friends and trying to.
No, that'd be great. Yeah, because that's what we encourage.
Absolutely.
You know, it reminds me, you know, 20 years ago when we tried to say what a hotel should look like in town, and every hotel developer looked at it and said, "What the heck is that?" and then Ria and I and several others worked on it for several years in a row to try and do something, and we still didn't get it right. We missed that boat.
Yeah.
So it's better to ask the developers now so that we know what they're looking for.
Good. I'll do so. Okay, sounds good. Any other thoughts? Right.
Wow, we cranked through this stuff. Good job, Mary. We cranked right through your entire agenda.
My entire agenda, and it's only 8:23.
Awesome.
Well, next time we'll talk about solar, so I'm sure we're not going to crank through that very fast.
Yeah, we could have done 2 hours on that today.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And it's going to be, but again, that's one of those polarizing things, because, you know, even in my head, it's one of those things that we want to get as much green energy as possible. However, I understand that there are property rights, and we have to walk that fine line as to not step on people's toes, yet to encourage it as much as possible, because, you know, eventually, you know, we all need to have clean energy.
True. It's problematic.
And it's up to us to.
One of those, the third rail that you talk about.
Trees, trash, and it's taxes, trees, and trash. I don't know.
You can just add solar to the list.
Yeah.
Okay. There's minutes that we need to approve. I did notice one thing. Hang on, I gotta pull it up.
And I'm looking.
After I save all of these documents that I've been making notes on. John, that's John G. That's why I convert everything to Word. It's so I can make notes right in the document. It's just so much easier for me. And I still can't find this. Okay. Okay, Adobe. There we go. Minutes. I did notice on the first page. Okay, second to the last paragraph. It said, discuss the impacts that the planning board looked to minimize through solar development, noise, visual impacts, stormwater drainage, tree cutting. I think that implies that the planning board was wanting to use solar developments to minimize noise and to minimize visual impact. I think it's just the word through is probably not right, because they wish to minimize the impact, those items, noise, visual impact, stormwater drainage, and tree cutting within solar developments.
How about planning board look to minimize as part of solar development noise?
Oh,
As a result of, yeah, you know what I
So
mean.
take out through and change it to as part of.
Okay, I think that'll work. Any other edits?
it looks like it was a lively meeting.
Oh, yeah. It was.
Sorry, I missed it.
You can always watch the video.
Okay, well,
I hear that they're riveting. So one thing, John G, is that we were hoping to have several things from you or through you that are mentioned in the minutes for the most part before we discuss solar the next time. So I'm just wondering what your timing is on these things. One thing was checking with the legal counsel and asking some specific questions about whether or not it's possible to put restrictions in the solar bylaw that is specific to solar commercial developments about setbacks, grade, percent of a lot developable, and some of the other suggestions that were made today, just to kind of get a first read. And I know that they may not love to give their advice in this way, but at least just to get a first read on, should we spend a lot of time talking about these things, or are they absolutely not a go?
So I need to reach out to town council.
Yep.
I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
I did talk to the assessor, and he gave me some figures because it was asked to compare the Lumber Street solar to the Lichen project.
Oh,
We had somewhat of a discussion on that, and he basically said that the Lumber Street value was 3.5 million, and their tax is about 43,000 per year. The 97 South Street value is about 10 million before the TIF, and their tax is about 170,000 per year. So, in terms of tax rates, I don't know how different it is, but there are other things that we talked about, as in you're not going to build a lichen type facility in a lot of the places you're going to build the solar, and that the property in the industrial just inherently is worth more than residential land, and therefore putting solar on that, you'd have to put a much larger solar project on that land to get the same taxes that you could get for a smaller biopharmaceutical building, which I think everyone realizes, but that's just confirmation from the assessor.
Okay.
So if there's anything more specific, I can ask him, but that's kind of the direction that our conversation went.
Okay. Sundar, you specifically had brought this up in the last meeting. Did you have any follow-up questions that John could?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's great. The other thing was a map that you were working on with the GIS.
I just got my new computer last week, so I'm on it now. and I've been able
Okay.
to play around with GIS, but hopefully I'll get that done this week.
Okay, great. So that means that we can put this on the agenda for 2 weeks from now. And that's our next meeting is the 9th. Yes, the 9th.
We're
Okay,
gonna be
that
doing
sounds
solar, remember? I don't know if we're gonna add too much.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so so that sounds good. Okay, I kind of skipped over the minutes. I'm sorry here. So any other edits to the minutes? Nope. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve with the edits that we made. Second?
Second,
Sundar Sivaraman, second.
Thank you. Okay, roll call vote. Mary Larson Marlowe, yes. Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Madhu?
Yes.
Curtis?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Ria?
Yes.
John?
yes.
Rachel? Have we lost Rachel? Oh, Rachel's there. We just don't have a picture of her.
I'm not voting
Oh, okay,
because I'm not sworn
fair
in
enough.
yet.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And I missed the motion. Who made the motion?
Ron did. Okay. We still have the nations on. We could ask them.
Ask. Why not? We have a couple more minutes.
We haven't adjourned yet. May I ask for some input from Chris, Ron, or Craig, or all of the above, about the OSLPD bylaw and what, if anything, needs to be changed in this bylaw to make it easier for developers to use this method of development versus a standard development. Ron?
Yes. Well, there's not, I think it works pretty well as it is, which you may take as it's working too well. But I think it's a good trade-off between the large lots that aren't necessary for a beautiful house site.
Mhm.
And the short road is better for the town, and in the end, they're going to be maintaining them. I don't see a whole hell of a lot to change, but the guy to talk to on it might be more like Joe Marquardt. He's, has seen so many different ones. I've only seen a handful of my own. So, I don't know. He'd be a good person to talk to, Mary.
Okay,
I
thanks.
think. But I think generally, I think they work well, and I think, as somebody said, the land ends up in the public domain sort of anyway. So I think they work well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to just, since some members of the public have stayed on, any last comments or suggestions or ideas for us before we adjourn the meeting tonight?
Mary, can I switch subjects for just a moment?
Yes, please go ahead.
Do you have a timeline on when warrant articles have to be completed in order to make the town meeting next spring, if we have a town meeting next spring?
John?
The warrant opens on, this was put in the memo, Sundar and Mary, for the
Oh.
planning board. You may have missed it. The warrant opens, hold on, I can pull it up. The warrant opens on January 4th and closes on February 1st.
Okay, so we, generally speaking, have to get our ZAC final recommendations to the planning board by mid-January. I'll double check that with Gary and John at the planning board meeting, whether or not they'll have a deadline earlier because they need time for public hearings at the planning board level. but it might be end of year. If
Yeah,
that's the case.
I thought Mr. Kamalo had mentioned that the entire timeline had been moved up.
Okay,
And so, you know,
so it
we
might
don't
be end
have
of the
as-
year.
we don't have as much time as we have had in the past to get things to the planning board for them to consider it to get it on the warrant. That's,
Correct.
I just wanted
And,
to.
and just, just to reiterate, what we discussed, when we reconvened this, after our COVID shutdown, is that we aren't going to be adding a lot of things to the warrant besides the things that are carrying over from last year. The exception to that is, of course, the solar that pretty much everybody wants us to have ready to at least get to planning board. Planning board can decide at that point whether or not they'll take it to town meeting, but they would like us to get changes made to it and get it to them for the review process. Okay.
Reasonable.
So nothing else has to happen before then. All the subdivision regs and things like that can happen at pretty much any time because it has nothing to do with town meeting, which is nice. Okay. All right.
Roll
Then I
call.
will, go ahead.
No, I said roll call. Because we actually, we actually weren't really supposed to go off and actually, because we had a meeting, we had a motion and a second. And we're only supposed to discuss, we were supposed to stay within the four corners of the motion that we had. So,
Oh, but
so we actually should have taken a vote to stay
we
open.
already took the vote on the minutes.
No,
Yeah.
oh, no, there's no motion to adjourn, I thought you took.
No, there was
Oh, good, sorry.
I was just going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, so moved, Madam Chairman.
Seconded, Sundar.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Mary, yes. Madhu,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Ria,
yes.
John,
Yes.
and Sundar.
Sundar, yes.
Thank you all. We are adjourned. Rachel, we'll get you
Good job.
sworn in so you can
Thank you.
vote.
Thank you.
See you
See how
next
much
good
fun it
night.
is, Rachel? See how much fun?
Yeah,
you
isn't
can
it
have
fun?
Yeah, this is fun, but yeah, thank you. Thank you guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.